All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Take Time Out with Tre Mosley, and I am Tre Mosley. Today, I have Mr. Bill Horneck. So, Bill and I go a ways back. He has used my voice on a few of his projects. He's a filmmaker, TV producer. As you can tell by the hardware in the back, your boy getting Emmys. What can you say about the guy? His company, Mind's Eye, they, it's not much that his lens doesn't pick up. But don't take my word for it. Check out this clip. Oh, we're back because I was sitting here getting my groove on. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bill Horneck, thank you, sir,
Peace,
for coming on through the
Trey.
show. Man, I am so glad that we get to sit down and chat. Usually when we're talking, it's about business. I guess it still is about business, but now it's in a more relaxed atmosphere where, you can be you and I can be me. And, I see you're rocking the Miami Heat, making me homesick. That's why I knew I had to represent Miami as well. And now I feel better. So with that being said, how does one get into filmmaking, or more specifically, how did you decide that this was the career path that you wanted to embark on?
I think I didn't choose it. It definitely chose me. And thanks for having me, Trey. I love speaking about myself.
Don't we all?
But yeah, the visual arts. I think the visual arts have always been part of my DNA. I think my dad actually was a pretty dedicated hobbyist back in the 60s when he was coming up. So I think he was into Super 8 film, family films, and photography, and there was always cameras around. And when I got into high school, I started diving into it more. And then I played basketball, and I was recruited by a Division III school in Rochester, New York. And they happened to be a world-renowned school of photography that's called Rochester Institute of Technology. So I went to RIT, got a Bachelor of Science. I moved from still into the moving visual field, and we did short films in college. We did video, multi-camera shows. So I learned all the things that I would need eventually as a producer very early on. And I've been doing it for multiple decades now. And my life, personal life and my business life are all combined. So I kind of always think in terms of my profession, and my family has evolved with my profession. All my kids are into it in some way. My wife is along for the ride, and she's been a great support, just like your wife, where the trials and tribulations of carving out a career as an independent artist it's not for the faint at heart, that's for sure.
No, it's not. I always preach that, a lot of folks, they see the after, but they don't know the before. And there's a lot of stories in that before that has brought us to the after. Um, so were you said it found you instead of you finding it, and your dad, he had the Super 8 going back in the day. Were you a curious child? Like, did he ever say, "Hey, take the camera," and you just kind of started filming stuff, or it later blossomed in life for you?
I think his stuff was always around. So he had like, Minolta camera bags with bodies and lenses. I didn't really get to experience his 8mm stuff, but we watched those films. He's got
Mm-hmm.
films of me. I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida,
Okay,
but
St. Pete.
my parents were only here for a short time, and then they moved back to Long Island where I was raised. But I have home movies of myself as an infant, 2-year-old, running around, the pier in St. Pete and a little house in St. Pete. So it's been around. So I think it just kind of organically infused in my soul to be kind
Now,
of corny.
moving forward to now, Bill the dad himself. Our cameras and technology is a little bit more high tech than what our dads had back in the day. Um, what are your home movies like with your kids?
Crazy. I have everything. My daughter is 23 now. She's in the PR and social media space. So we have everything from, I had whatever the latest camera was back when she was born in 1999. I have footage of her on that. And I have the latest little like flip camera, which was kind of like an MPEG camera that you held vertically.
Yeah.
And you shot it, and it was just always with us. So I have her. I got my middle son, Max, got everything of his life. I have my youngest, who's now 18, and he's on the video production staff at FAU as a freshman because he knows so much about camera work. I have everything about his life. So I have an intent one day to make the story of our family as a docuseries for myself, not for public consumption.
Still, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think that's dope that the family has embarked on this journey with you. Because sometimes we as creatives, we have a passion about something, and it's hard for other people to see the picture the way we see it. And we get excited about it, thinking, hey, this happened or this happened. And, sometimes for families, like, yay, I mean, good for you, but you're kind of like, but. So I think it's cool that everybody is on board.
I got a perfect example to just it's why they're on board, I think, is more, this is a reason why, because they get to do cool things because of my profession, and then they like that. So I had the Miami Dolphins as clients for a long time. Don't have them as clients anymore. But we used to do the annual swimsuit calendar special that would air regionally. And one year they say, hey, we're shooting in Atlantis in the Bahamas. We want you and a crew to come and do the behind the scenes making of the calendar. I'm like, great. But my kids are young. My wife is stressed out whenever I'm out of town. I'm like, if you could find a room big enough for my wife and my kids, then we got a deal. And they agreed. So my wife and 2 kids, they were about 3 and 4 years old. They jumped on an Air Jamaica flight out of Lauderdale on their own, met me there, and they had the suite with me for the full week, and they had a blast. I had a blast, and we've had experiences like that together on countless projects, not only in sports, but corporate work that I do, to pay the bills, but between the bigger projects. So, and it's kind of, they realize that our industry drops you into experiences that not every industry or profession does for a person or their family.
Very true. Perks of the job, I always say.
That's it.
Yep. So, what would you say, uh, being that you've done corporate work, sports work? I know you also do stuff with brands, Five Guys, and a couple of other corporate entities. Like if I said, "Hey, I got a blank check, go produce this," what would it be?
Hmm. I think from this point forward, the last couple of years, I've been focusing on a career turn, if you will, and the turn is from a lot of live sports, which I've done. I've been a field producer for the NBA for close to a quarter century, 25 years. Um, I kind of aged out of doing that because the rates for field producers down in Miami for the NBA kind of stalled at a certain level. So I decided, my next career challenge is I want to do stories that I'm passionate about that are kind of scripted. There could be nonfiction work in my future, but I really want to focus on the more challenging aspect of narrative storytelling. So a few years ago, I wrote a script with a couple of friends. It's a really good script. It's gotten great feedback. So I would take that blank check and hope it would be a brand that would somehow integrate nicely into this narrative story, which would be my first feature-length narrative. It's a coming-of-age film about a young man that drops into a world that he never even knew existed. And through good fortune, hard work, and a really supportive kind of adopted family, his life changes. So that brand could be like Nike would be perfect for a story like this. Could be, a clothing brand. It could be, you name it, so many brands. And I wouldn't need that much money from them. Maybe a $250,000 would be.
I mean, since we're asking, not that much. I got you. Yeah, and that's why I brought that up because I knew this particular story, meant a lot to you, and I was honored to get a chance to read the script as well, and I think it would be a great story. So, any of you angel investors who are watching, I'm just saying, give the guy a shot.
Yeah, it's taken a while. I probably had maybe 20 drafts of the script, and I think it's a lot stronger from maybe when you read it a year and a half ago. So things are happening. I got a really good director out of Maryland, a young man. His name is Jimmy Jenkins. Jimmy's got a couple of big docs coming out, one on Alabama football. He has a couple of narratives that he's done independently that were really good. And kind of always in my career, I've mentored a lot of younger professionals, and I've always spotted the ones that had the it factor. And like you had the it factor when I first came across you. Jimmy is in that same ilk, and then some other producers that are working behind the scenes with me have really opened up some opportunities that within the next 6 months, you're going to be hearing a lot about what we're doing on this project.
Cool. How important is mentoring, especially in an industry like this, where you have a lot of young filmmakers, a lot of young composers, folks that want to get into producing, and they may not always have the means. I mean, they've gone to school for it, but then the real world hits and they got to crack the pavement and start out as that intern, and they want to be a PA and move up. How important is mentoring in this industry? And I guess my question for you is, how are you as a mentor to others? What do you get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, without mentors, we'd all be anybody that's accomplished a portion of their own goals, whether they be personal or professional. You don't do it without the help of a mentor or mentees. It's always been super important to me. One of my biggest mentors was my college manager. I worked for the catering department at RIT. I earned probably 15 to 20 hours a week worth of work study, and I was dropped into the catering department. And I became a student manager, but my direct manager, I'm still friends with to this day. His name is Gary Gasper. He's from Henrietta, New York. And Gary was only like 10 years older than us. So we were all 19. So he was 29. And he taught us so much about professional responsibility and courtesy and politeness and finishing a task. And I applied that to everything I've done in my television and filmmaking career. And I think I've shared those same principles with all of the people that I've mentored. And I started mentoring probably in the, I'd say, late 90s when I came to Florida. One of my first mentees, his name is Mickey Attilis, and Mickey is now the senior cameraman for the Miami Heat. Every game that the Heat have at home, Mick is the guy holding the camera that goes out onto the court. He sits under the basket. He's been there for every championship that the Heat have had.
Nice.
Mickey, he came to us and said, I'm just doing gripping now, but how could I do what you guys do? And the first company I moved down to Florida to work with, they were called Five Star. We hired Mickey full time, and he started as a PA. And now he's an accomplished pro. And I have so many examples like Mickey over the years that I've kind of just taken under my wing. Always paid them something. I never asked people to intern for free. Always gave them some money and then turned it into freelance money. And then they turn those experiences into really good careers.
Right.
I have a young lady, Amy Casey, that now works on every Marvel project out of Atlanta that there is. Another person, Chris Shane, he works for Warner Brothers, does all of the social media editing for so many of their networks' promos. So people like that, it makes me feel good, but I even learn a lot from them on the journey together. So mentoring is huge, and I think I wouldn't be as passionate about what I do if I didn't have people to pass on what I'm learning to them and then learn from them as well.
I think it's important. And also it keeps your industry thriving, growing, because the next crop comes in, and then hopefully they impart something on the next crop, and those seeds continue to be planted and to continue to sow, especially like in voiceover. When I got into this back in 2009, I didn't know anybody. And I was pretty much on the seat of my pants, like, okay, that sounds like a cool gig, or that looks like a nice microphone. And I didn't know anything. And as I got into it later on down the line and started to meet people who have been doing this 15, 20, 30 years and kind of pulling their ear like, hey, can you show me how this works? And why is it important to have that? So I definitely understand that. And now, for me, entering into not quite 20 years, but 15-ish,
Yeah.
I have a lot of young folk, and not even young folk, just people, period, who come to me and say, hey, I've been following your career. I'm kind of stuck on this thing. What should I do? Or how do you get your sound that way? One of my mentors, a guy named Joe Cipriano, his voice, what hasn't Joe done?
Shout out, Joe. Hey, Joe.
Yeah, Joe Cipriano's he's a cool dude. He always told me, and one of the things that we like to say in the VO industry is make sure that you pay it forward. And that's paying it forward with your time, paying it forward with resources, and sometimes just paying it forward with your presence, just being there, because I can recall times where I was ready to pack up my gear, go to the pawn shop, and just like, here, just take it all. I'm done. But when you have folks like him, Dave Fenoy, so many legends in this game that treat you like a person and not because you're here and they're there, I think it's I don't know. I think it's just really cool for people to just be nice nowadays. That's hard to even find. In a creative circle, it's competitive, yes, but there's still people that'll say, you know what, you, you're on the right path, but if you tweak this or if you do this thing, I think it'll make your ride a little bit smoother. Um, so I'm a big proponent of mentors and different types of collaborations and stuff like that as well. So
Yeah.
being a producer and filmmaker, uh, our paths cross quite a bit. Um, what is it about folks that are in the creative arts, be it music, filmmaking, voiceover? Why do we love gear so much? And get a whole bunch of it and maybe not even use a third of it, but it's there to have. What is that about?
I don't know. One podcast I listened to, Alex Ferrari, it's a indie filmmakers podcast. It's called Indie Film Hustle. He calls it the beautiful sickness um, when it relates to filmmaking, being an independent filmmaker. But I also think being a content creator and a creative in our spaces, yours and mine, and the various other ones. Yeah, sometimes you're a gear person, other times you're not. And I happen to I didn't want to be intimidated by the gear, but I do hire a lot of DPs that have all their own gear and lighting directors and you name it, digital imaging technicians. But I always wanted to explore that stuff too. So I found it easy to buy it so that in a pinch, I could do it if we had a budget that was too small or a crew member didn't show up. And I think there are creative types that want to understand everyone's role so that you can make whatever the end product is or the end story is kind of better because you know how people are supposed to function in the role of that piece of equipment. So I don't know. It's either you're a gear person or you're not. I happen to be a gear lover, but I also am not foolish to think that I would try and do everything myself. So I'd rather surround myself with great people that know their tool set and I have an understanding of their tool set. And I think that's a good combo to get to your end result. And so I'm sorry that you're infused with the beautiful sickness. And,
Yes, I have been infected. My friends, we talk about the one piece of gear, and we call it the she'll understand gear. And that's when you bought something and your wife is like, that costs what? What's your she'll understand gear that you currently own?
It's either my, we have a Sony camera. It's still, it was probably a $10,000 camera when I bought it, but all the accessories for it when I want a better lens, it's $3,000 for a lens. If I want the iMac, the latest and greatest to edit with. So, but I have, my business credit card. So sometimes she doesn't even know that I throw something on there.
Well, I hope she doesn't watch this.
Sorry, honey. as long as I pay it off, she's and I pay the mortgage and I help with all the other expenses.
There you go. And it always comes back. So it's all good. Yeah. Technology is also a very important component in what we do. How has technology changed from way back in the 80s and 90s to how things are now? Do you find that a lot of the processes are still the same, just maybe a little bit more streamlined, or, how technical from then to now, excuse me, is technology when it comes to filmmaking and producing?
Yeah, I think image and sound acquisition, the tools make it easier, but the process still needs to be fundamentally the same. So let's just say that you're shooting with your iPhone now and you're doing a stand-up with somebody that's hosting something. You need to know that your mic placement, the type of mic you use, whether you're using the iPhone's mic or you got an accessory outboard mic, you need to know that you got to do it in an environment where the sound is kind of dead. And if you're going to do it on a street corner, you have to wait for those moments where there's not passing traffic. And then when you get that file home, back to your office, you're either going to be pulling your hair out working with sound filters in Adobe Audition or Pro Tools or whatever other software you use to try and minimize that extraneous sound. So if you do it right in the first place, back to the gear that was, back when I started, we had double systems. So we had a Nagra recorder, which was a sound recorder that had physical spools of tape, and you recorded to that. And you use your clapboard and you sync it up with either your video footage or your film footage. You don't have to do that now, so that's easier. But the principles of how you gather that sound are still the same. And I think that applies to cameras as well. So the techniques, lighting, spatial awareness, all that stuff still is how the cream rises to the top when it comes to content creators. And I follow so many on vloggers on YouTube or podcasters, and I always take note of who's doing it exceptionally well. So I think that if anything, all the kids that I get to work with nowadays, the colleges, many of the colleges are cheating them out of really teaching them the fundamentals, and they're skipping a lot of steps. And I don't appreciate that because that doesn't set them up for success. And when they come out of colleges, they don't know the basics of filmmaking unless they went to maybe, one of the top 10 filmmaking schools in the country. But even the school where my son goes to, they have a degree in film and television production, but they don't do enough, in my opinion, to teach the students what they need to know to be successful.
It sounds like you need to get on the board, man, and go and pound the gavel and say, hey, if you're going to throw these kids out here, at least have them prepared. Excuse me, have them prepared before they get tossed into the wild like that.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I do, when I see those kids, I teach them what they need to know, and I enjoy that. But yeah, there's for the amount of that schools are charging nowadays, these kids need to know every step of the production and audio production process, and they're not getting it at many of the institutions that are out there.
Now, I remember I was looking on your Instagram maybe a week or so ago. There were some things going on down in Broward County that I know you were involved in. Tell us a little bit about what was going on and your involvement with that. Good
question. I don't know. What was it? Was it Trump's indictment, or was it something?
No, it was. I know it had something to do with.
I did cover that though, so I didn't know if that was. I string for some of the news networks too. So I happened to be at the Trump indictment in Miami. But what was it sports related? I don't know what we're talking about.
I'm trying to recall now. See, this is what happens when you're old and you drink.
Okay, wait. Let me hold on. Let me call up my IG and see what I did. I don't even remember. Sorry.
Welcome to live streaming, folks, where this is what happens when you have an unscripted show. You get all type of stuff.
NBA basketball. We did a corporate gig. I don't know, Trey. I don't exactly know what we're talking about. I just finished a documentary on this school that went out of business. The Fort Lauderdale Film Festival. Was that what you're talking about?
Film Commission. That's what it was.
Sorry. Let's shout out to Fliff. And we're in the tail end of the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival is happening right now as we speak. We went to the premiere party, which was at the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. That was such a blast. And I saw an amazing film called The Good Half. The Good Half was directed by Jonathan Schwartzman, who is Talia Shire's son. Talia Shire from
Wow.
Rocky.
Yeah. Adrian.
Jonathan and Jason are her two sons. She married a producer. His last name was Schwartzman, and they had two boys, or filmmakers. So his film premiered. Joe Jonas was the lead, and it's a really heartwarming drama about a young man that loses his mom too early in life and all of the implications of that with his family. And that opened the festival last Friday night. And it was going on all week. I didn't get to go to any other screenings, but the Broward Film Commission announced last week that they have probably the most robust film incentive program here in Florida. And Florida basically gave up their incentive programs maybe a decade ago.
Yeah. And I know a lot of, because at
when
one
Georgia
point,
started, Georgia started popping because Florida gave them up, and all this work that we used to get in Florida went away.
Yeah, I know a lot of of my buddies who do the same thing you do in Florida. That's one of the biggest gripes that they have, is that, you know, those filming opportunities and credits and stuff that you all used to get went poof, and now Georgia is now basically Hollywood East. You know, if it's not being shot there, then they're going further up north to, you know, Toronto or Vancouver, and in Canada. Has that affected your business? I'm sure it has, but has it been a significant effect, or with the tax incentives and just work period as a filmmaker in Florida? How has that affected you in the past, like you said, decade or so?
Yeah, well, I think because I'm finally making that career turn into scripted and narrative entertainment, it will have a major impact on where we choose to do future work. Previous work, all of the lighting and grip companies and the professionals that I know that work on high-end commercials, indie features, the occasional big, Hollywood feature that comes to town, it happens so sporadically they can't consider themselves full-time in that space if they live here in Florida, because the work just doesn't come enough. So a lot of them journey with the projects to other states, like South Carolina, like Georgia, like Louisiana. So I think, since Bloodline, I think, was the last big series that happened down in the Keys. And that was probably 12, 13 years ago. Since then, Florida has only been for the occasional couple days of scenics that a scripted project needs. Maybe there's been a few streaming series that have based their work here. So many of these people that I know moved away. And Broward County and some counties up in around Tampa have finally taken it on their own to offer incentives that don't have anything to do with the state of Florida. And so, for instance, if my next project is north of 2 million, Broward County, if we do most of that work in Broward, which is only 20 minutes south of where I live, we could hit a threshold of 20% cash rebate. So on every $1 million you spend, you could potentially get $200,000 back as a check after you've filled out all the proper forms and the Broward Film Commission and the committees approve the project. So you could offer that to investors as a way to hedge on their investment. So that's what we're working towards with my first project, which will be, if I have it my way, shot here in South Florida. There's many reasons to go to other places, but I really want to do it here in my own community.
And I think that's important. One, you're giving jobs to people right there in your hometown. And, the money comes back. And I think community is very important. And I think that's commendable that you could have gone anywhere else, but you said, you know what? No, this one, we're going to keep this one home. So props to you on that. Um, so now then, my favorite part of the show, hence the name of the show, taking time out. Um, when the mics are off, the lights are down, and you get that. I don't know if they still use clappers, but they probably have something digital now. But when you've wrapped and you got maybe a week or a couple of weeks to yourself, how does Bill Horneck take time out for himself?
That's a good question. I think my wife and I go to the beach when we can. Boynton Beach is one of the coolest beaches. It's literally 5 minutes away, so we love to spend an afternoon on the beach. We're voracious consumers of film and streamed content, so we love nothing better than kicking back on a Sunday and watching movies or series on any of the networks. I love golf. I do love golf, so try for once a week, maybe twice a month to get out on the links. I love golf. It's such a humbling sport, but the environment that you do it in, it doesn't get any better. It's so beautiful and quiet, and it's just you against this little round object that you have to put into a goal that's hundreds of yards away. It's an amazing sport that I love as a hobby. And then just hanging with friends. I have so many friends. I have friends from when I was 8 years old to this day. I still have those friends, and I have all the friends I've met through my career and through my wife's circle of friends. And I just like hanging out and having fun and thinking about what my next project's going to be. Because I probably work more than I just hang out, but I love combining them both.
What's something you're streaming right now that really keeps your attention?
I just finished the Rocky docuseries Sly.
It's on my list.
Yeah, that was great. Schwarzenegger's was awesome. I love that one.
That was cool.
I love, I'm watching Bass Reeves' Lawman on Paramount Plus, which is really good. It's a Taylor Sheridan series. I love all the Taylor Sheridan series.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched Gotti. Get Gotti is a really good docuseries. Growing up on Long Island, I knew a lot of people that were adjacent to the mob in some way, mob adjacent. So it's kind of fun looking back on those eras. And, any good movie. There's so many good movies. I went and saw Scorsese's latest, Killers of the Flower Moon, was awesome. Yeah. So, I consume as much of it as I can because I enjoy the experience, but I'm also looking at the craft and seeing what I could apply from what
that was my next question. I was going to say, with the so many different genres of movies and like so I guess, how do you separate the fan from the filmmaker? Can you watch a movie just as a fan and say, that was a pretty good film? Or as you're watching, you're going, why'd they pan that way? Or that shot shouldn't have been that tight. If he would have just brought it in, how do you, are you able to separate the two?
No. It goes when I'm watching the Dolphin game. I look at the way the director called it, or the cam op shot it, or why did they go to that? That now it's a handheld Ronin with a 50 mil lens. The NFL loves that for the celebrations in the end zone. I soak it all up, but I mean, my mind works so quick that I think I'm able to compartmentalize what I'm experiencing as the craft of a audiovisual content creator, and I could separate that pretty quickly from the fan or the content consumer. So it's kind of a parallel thing going on in my mind, and I bet everyone in our world does it to some degree. But I just go with it. Yeah, I can't beat
I'm
myself
guilty.
up over it.
There's certain commercials that I listen to, or because I do a lot of narration when I am watching documentaries that have a narrator, I listen for the breaths because sometimes, depending on the production company, they will take breaths out. Some production companies will keep breaths in. And I remember watching this really great documentary, and I can't even remember the genre of it, but the dude was just, he would get into his to the read, and then you just hear, and I'm like, why did they keep that in there?
I remember
And
all of those. Yep.
yeah, so last question, and I'll let you go. All
Thanks.
time favorite film.
Probably the one that changed my life for whatever reason. I remember it as clear as day. It was Rocky. I was 13 years old, and I was this pencil thin 13-year-old that used to get picked on by every little bully in our neighborhood. And I would actually read little pamphlets in like Field and Stream magazine that showed like the skinny guy on the beach getting sand kicked on him and saying, you try our exercise program and that won't
Oh, the
happen.
old Charles Atlas
Yes,
inserts.
yes.
Yeah.
I used to, I used to, I used to do like wall sits in my bedroom to try and get my legs bigger. I would do these kind of plyometrics to get my arms and shoulders bigger. But I saw Rocky. And when I came out of that theater, and my dad always had weights in our basement, but I never used them, that just pumped me up. From 13 on, I swear to God, I was on a mission to change myself athletically and physically. So
Nice.
Rocky was it for me for what it did to my life. But so many movies from, gosh, Star Wars was great for me. But I love newer things like what was a big one? Legends of the Fall.
Hmm.
Ed Zwick was amazing. Last of the Mohicans. I love the Perfect Storm with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg was an amazing film. New
Yeah.
stuff. There's so many new ones that have impacted me that I can't even. They don't even come to mind anymore. But there's just so many great stories out there. And before I leave this earth, I have a roster of great stories. I feel, and I'm always a good. I feel I'm a good judge of potential, not only in people but in stories. So
Mhm.
I know that if I want to see it, other people will see it, and I have about a dozen projects that are on my production slate to take me, well into the next decade that I'm going to work on. And if one of those makes any kind of impact to help change somebody's life in a positive way, like Rocky did for me, then I'll be a happy man.
Well, I think I can't think of a better way to end the segment. Um, Bill Horneck, thank you so much, man, for doing this and taking some time out with me. How can folks get in touch with you if they want to shop your wares and get your crew out there and get some stuff shot?
IMDb, it's just imdb.me.billhorneck, all one word. And then my website, mindseyecorp.com, MINDS letter I, CORP.com. Kind of get a sense of the stuff that I'm working on. I do a lot of corporate work still to help pay the bills in between, but I got to that point where I don't have to focus on that. I could focus on my future work and not
Mhm.
what I need to do every day to pay the bills. So it's a good place to be, and it's taken me a long time to get here, but I'm gonna go with it.
That's cool. I understand that 100%. You it's cool to always have a name gig. Hey, I've done this, but in the cracks, we still, people reach out and say, hey man, I heard you in this video game, or hey, good stuff in Madden, or I heard your promo, but then I may have an e-learning job. I
Yeah,
may have something where I'm just like, today we'll teach you about the proper way to blah, blah, blah. And not as glamorous, but like you said, it keeps the bills paid when the big wigs aren't calling. Um, so it's part of the job, man. It's what we do. And
That's it. And I just got to give you a shout out because it made me nothing happier than to hear you do an NBA playoff promos and seeing your work on all of the big video games. And I knew you're a prime example of me being able to know that somebody is the real deal, even when you weren't. I knew you were going to be. So congrats, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Now you got me all gooey. I got to go do some hit the rack. But Bill, thanks again, man. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Take Time Out with Tre Mosley, and continued success to you, brother.
Thanks, Tre. Peace.
All right. Till next time. Thanks for listening to the Take Time Out with Tre Mosley podcast, part of the Titan Media Network. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcast. To see the video version of this, you can find us on YouTube on the Take Time Out with Tre Mosley YouTube page. Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching. Either way, we'll see you next time.